Part 1. Beginning.
In a remote village surrounded by dense forests, there lived a woodcutter named Kieran. Known for his strength and resilience, Kieran was the sole provider for his family, working tirelessly from dawn until dusk. Yet, despite his hard work, he was always plagued by an unshakable sense of discontent. No matter how much wood he sold or how much food he brought home, it never felt like enough. One evening, as Kieran sat by the river sharpening his axe, he noticed an old monk sitting on a nearby rock. The monk was silent, staring at the flowing water with a peaceful expression. Intrigued by his calm demeanor, Kieran couldn't resist approaching him. "Monk," Kieran began, "how can you sit there so calmly while the world demands so much from us? Don't you have responsibilities?" The monk turned to Kieran with a gentle smile. "I do, but my responsibilities do not weigh on me as yours seem to weigh on you. Tell me what troubles you." Kieran hesitated, then sighed. "No matter how hard I work, I'm never at peace. It feels like I'm carrying a weight I can't put down." The monk nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps I can help you understand. Would you join me for a walk?" Reluctantly, Kieran agreed, and together they began to walk along the riverbank.
Part 2. Teaching.
As they walked, the monk bent down and picked up a small pebble from the ground. He handed it to Kieran. "Hold this pebble in your hand as we walk," the monk instructed. Kieran frowned, but complied. The pebble was so light that it felt insignificant in his strong hand. He carried it without complaint as they continued their journey. After an hour of walking, the monk asked, "How does the pebble feel now?" Kieran shifted the pebble in his palm. "It's starting to feel heavy," he admitted, "even though it's just a pebble." The monk nodded. "That is the nature of burdens, Kieran. It's not their size that matters, but how long we hold on to them. The longer you cling to something, even if it's small, the heavier it becomes." Kieran's brow furrowed. "But I can't just put my burdens down. My family depends on me." The monk stopped walking and turned to face Kieran. "The burdens you carry are not the work itself, but the expectations and fears you attach to it. You worry about not doing enough, about failing those who rely on you. These thoughts are the real weight you bear." He gestured to the river. "Let's test this. Throw the pebble into the water." Kieran hesitated, then tossed the pebble into the river. The water rippled briefly, then returned to its calm flow. "Now," the monk said, "how does your hand feel?" Kieran flexed his fingers. "Lighter," he admitted. "The river is like the present moment," the monk explained. "When you let go of your burdens, even for a moment, you create space for peace. This doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities. It means learning to carry them without clinging to the fear and anxiety that make them heavier." For a moment, Kieran was silent, watching the river flow. He could see how effortlessly it moved, carrying leaves and twigs without resistance. "But how do I let go of the fear?" he asked finally. The monk smiled. "Start by observing it. When fear arises, don't push it away or let it consume you. Acknowledge it, then ask yourself if it serves you. Most fears are like shadows. They seem large but are easily diminished when faced with light." They continued walking, and the monk picked up another pebble, handing it to Kieran. "This time, hold the pebble, but keep your hand open." Kieran followed his instructions, holding the pebble in his palm with an open hand. As they walked, the pebble moved but did not feel heavy. "What's the point of this?" he asked. "This is how you can carry your responsibilities," the monk explained. "Hold them lightly, without gripping them with fear or attachment. Let them rest in your awareness, but don't let them dominate you. This way, they won't weigh you down." Kieran nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "So, it's not about escaping my responsibilities, but about changing how I hold them." "Exactly," the monk said. "Life will always bring challenges, but how you respond to them determines whether they become burdens or opportunities for growth." As they reached a clearing by the river, the monk sat down on a large stone and gestured for Kieran to join him. The evening sun bathed the landscape in golden light, and the sound of the flowing water filled the air. "I have one final question for you," the monk said. "What brings you joy?" Kieran hesitated. He hadn't thought about joy in a long time. His days were consumed by work and worry. I'm not sure, he admitted. The monk's gaze softened. Find time for the things that light your heart, Kieran. Even amidst responsibilities, joy is what keeps the spirit alive. A balanced life is not just about work and duty, but also about connection, gratitude, and presence.
Part 3. Conclusion.
For the first time, Kieran saw his life through a different lens. He realized that his endless striving and self-imposed pressure had been the true source of his weariness. Inspired by the monk's words, he began to practice letting go of his worries, focusing instead on the tasks at hand with a clear and present mind. In the weeks that followed, Kieran noticed a transformation in himself. His work felt less burdensome, his interactions with his family more joyful. He still worked hard, but the weight he had carried for so long no longer felt unbearable. Whenever he felt the old frustrations creeping back, Kieran would walk to the river, pick up a pebble, and toss it into the water. Each time, he was reminded of the monk's wisdom. Burdens only grow heavier the longer we hold them, but peace is always within reach if we choose to let go. As the seasons passed, Kieran's newfound peace became evident to those around him. Villagers sought his advice, marveling at how he seemed to carry life's challenges with ease. He shared the monk's teachings, encouraging others to find their own balance. One day, as Kieran sat by the river with his youngest son, the boy picked up a pebble and asked, "Father, why do you always throw these into the water?" Kieran smiled and ruffled his son's hair. "Because it reminds me to let go of what I don't need," he said, "and to remember that life flows best when we don't try to hold it too tightly." The boy looked at the river, then threw his own pebble into the water. Together, they watched the ripples fade, feeling a quiet sense of connection and peace. Kieran never saw the monk again, but the lessons he learned stayed with him for the rest of his life. And in the village, the story of the pebble and the river became a cherished tale, passed down through generations as a reminder that even the heaviest burdens can be lightened when we learn to let go.